Hello, Herlighters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. I hope you guys have a fantastic holiday. I'm a big fan of Thanksgiving, just excessive eating, moderate to heavy drinking, no gifts, friends, family, being thankful for stuff. I tell you, I love it. It's definitely, absolutely, hands down my favorite holiday. And you know what I'm most thankful for? All of you listening and supporting this podcast. Honestly, it's been such a blast. And super thankful for everyone who came out to the live shows. We wrapped the tour. The tour is over. Thankful for Jess and Justin, the producers of this. They went out of their way and made the tour so much fun. I have to say, I met so many cool people on and off the stage. It was just a big bucket of joy. And got two more live episodes coming out. So listen up and look out for those. Tennis legend Renee Stubbs joined me in New York City, and Jenny Wen, the owner of the Sports Bra, joined me in Portland. Both shows were such a blast. So look out for those. Okay, so much to be thankful for this year. And that's what this episode is all about. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about what we're thankful for in the world of women's sports. And I picked the perfect guest for this episode. It's Jenny Hagel. She's an Emmy nominated writer and EP of Late Night with Seth Meyers. She was also the head writer and executive producer of the Amber Ruffin Show on Peacock. She's also written for the Golden Globes, Impractical Jokers, Big Gay Sketch Show, and also, to me, the best credit, she's been nominated for two GLAAD Awards for her contributions to addressing LGBTQ issues in late night television. I mean, that is huge. We have such a fun conversation about how she's kind of like this late bloomer into the world of women's sports, how she shares her love of the WNBA with her son. And then we dive into a list of athletes and events we're thankful for. You're going to love her. So let's jump right in.
Did you play a sport growing up?
I did. I played, oh God, I played it all. Yeah, soccer,
Great.
softball, basketball was my jam. I played basketball in college.
That's what I was going
Then
to ask. Where did you play basketball?
I played basketball at Dickinson. It was like D3. It was fun. And
Hmm.
then I fucked up my back and couldn't play again. Um, and that led me into comedy in a really weird full circle. How about you? Did you play a ton of stuff?
No, I played no sports, and which is such a bummer because I think I thought I didn't like being physical, and I realized it's like not to be like such a cliche like sexism story, but my parents, like both my brothers, played a million sports, and I think my parents just didn't think that was a thing girls did. So my dad is like his love is baseball, so he would take me in the backyard. He taught me how to bat, how to throw, how to catch, how to field a grounder, and then they just never signed me up for. Yeah, I have a glove that's oiled that my I oiled with my dad. But they just never, I think they just were very much a product of the 80s. They're very much boomers and they just thought boys do this. I did 7 years of ballet, hands down the worst ballet anybody's ever seen. And so I think I just thought like, oh, I hated ballet. I don't like to be physical. And then really like after college, I started running a little bit and was like, oh, okay, I guess there's one exception. And then one time I took rowing classes and was like, okay, there's two exceptions. And then finally I was like, oh, I think I actually would have really liked being an athlete. Not that I think I would have been great, but I'm like, oh, this is just an exactly what happens when you aren't given the opportunity. And
Yeah.
and then I thought I didn't like sports at all, like watching them. And then in the last few years, as women's sports have gotten a bunch of like visibility and being easier to access, I was like, oh, okay, well, I just like the women's soccer teams. I have crushes on them. Okay, well, I just like the New York Liberty because they're in my neighborhood. And then I was like, at the point where I'm setting alarms to watch games, like maybe I actually do like sports, but it just was so, yeah, I was so much the product of like that input of like, of absorbing what society told me of like, girls don't play sports, girls don't watch sports, girls think sports are boring. And so I kept like explaining away this interest in sports. And then I got to the point where I'm like Googling the World Cup schedule, finding bars in New York that show them, texting friends to meet me at those bars. And I'm like,
You're in it.
maybe it's time to think like, oh, maybe I am a sports person. Like at the point where I'm like Googling season tickets to the PWHL, which plays an hour and a half from my home. Like, what are we doing? At what point do we just say you're a sports person? But I also think, you tell me, I think there's like this cultural gatekeeping around being a sports person where it's like, well, do you know a lot of stats? And I don't because I haven't spent a lifetime watching sports because I think it was very much presented as a thing for men. And so I think I felt like, oh, well, I can't say I'm a sports person because I can't like say a bunch of statistics. And I was like, well, I don't know. You can also just start learning. So I don't know.
Oh,
That's
you
my
don't
very long
need
answer to your question.
you absolutely do not need to know stats. That is a complete and utter myth. Like I know stats because I actually love stats. That's the only like I play fantasy baseball. I don't even watch a ton of baseball because of like the math that's involved. So like that's just like my brain. But you, everything you just described, you are not only a fan, you are an athlete, and you need to like dive in. I follow this woman named Joan, don't know who she is, on Instagram, and it's like Joan lifts weights. She's like 90. She started lifting like 5 years ago, and she's ripped. So
I
I
love
think
that.
I love this new chapter for you, right? It's like you're gonna explore all these sports that you've never played and you've never watched, and you're doing a deep dive. This is awesome. This is very
It's
exciting.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's fun, but I think it is like exactly that thing where, people are like, well, it's hard for kids to connect with literature if they don't see themselves in the protagonist. And the number of times I've heard that or read that and been like, yes, yes. And then it didn't even occur to me. But then I'm like, but I don't like sports. Well, dumbass, maybe it's because you don't see yourself in the protagonist. And the second that women's sports get any kind of visibility, that they're easy to access on TV, I know all their names. I'm rooting for all of them. Mostly, I'm rooting for all of them to marry me. But that,
Oh
but that's
yeah.
not nothing, Erin. That's not nothing. No, but it's like, oh, maybe I didn't connect with it for this reason and not because of the sports.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. It's, growing up, I mean, I was, obsessed to a different level, but I had like all these dudes on my wall. Like I joke about this all the time. I had like half the New York Giants, Yankees. I had this random wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. If I could have gotten out of bed every morning and put in, you know, our New York Liberty and Serena and like all of these heroes, I would have probably, I don't know. I could have been like, oh, I can work hard enough to be a professional or like strive for like D1 or what, I just played because I loved it. There was no future. I
Mhm.
could not see anything. So absolutely. It changes when you can see, all I did was watch men's sports and tennis. That's why I love tennis so much because that was the only females I could see play besides the Olympics. So
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about the fact that tennis is like the one area where we've always had female public figures. I had Jennifer Capriati shoes,
yeah. Oh,
right?
Capriati. She
They were
was fun
pastel.
to watch. Of course they were. And you had to
um,
wear like a sundress while you're
no,
in the Capriati. But ballet is no joke. I mean, you have to be athletic. That's super athletic.
I'm not very flexible. I think nobody needed to see me do ballet. I'm not coordinated. Like I like to run because it's just like I just go in a straight line. But this was actually really cool. Maybe like 2 years ago, I got 3 years ago, I got a message on Facebook, which am almost never on. And so I like got this message, and it was like from somebody. And they were like, "Hey, you probably don't remember me. I'm not trying to be a creep or anything, but I was home for the holidays and cleaning out some stuff in my parents' house, and I found this picture of my ballet recital, and I think this is you in it." And it was a woman who I had been in ballet class for years with. And as soon as I saw her face too, I was like, I remember this kid, absolutely. And there is the ballet recital. And we're all wearing these ridiculous outfits. And then I'm so much taller than everybody else. And it's so clear they tried to hide me in the back, as they should have, but they like couldn't really because I had a foot on all the other girls. It is the funniest picture and the clearest example of like, yeah, I did not need to be there. I did not need to be there.
You needed to be playing basketball.
No shit. I have a really tall son. He's like freakishly tall. And again, this is how much your self-image gets formed by the outside. Is I kept being like, wonder where all this height came from. Wonder where all this height came from. And then this woman sends me this picture of my own ballet recital. And I'm like, and I kept being like, it's the donor. It's the donor. It's like, yeah, maybe, but also I'm bringing something to the table. But it's like I don't think of myself as tall. I don't think of myself as athletic. I think my sense of self was so shaped by like what the expectation is from the outside.
The greatest thing right now is what happened to you hopefully will never happen again. You know what I mean? Our
That's right.
generations now, I think hopefully are the last ones of seeing women in a certain light and only capable of certain things. And I think these, just the fact that there's like 7 or 8 pro leagues I can think about just off the top of my head, and that's not even like the sub leagues within each sport. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, the so I was saying before, my son is 10, and one thing that has been really cool to watch is So we live in Brooklyn, not far from where the Liberty play. When I tell you that is the cool thing to wear at his school for both boys and girls, it's the cool thing to talk about. During the finals, all the kids were showing up with Liberty gear on, all the parents, and I'm talking like all the parents are wearing Liberty stuff. We went to there was like a family morning where you can go to your kid's classroom and see what they're up to. And it was right before game 4. And multiple dads were pulling me aside, being like, hey man, what do you think? You think it's going to go to game 5? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like the dads. It was so cool. And then after Ionescu hit that insane 3-pointer, my son told me, I was like, hey, how was school today? He was like, it was pretty fun. At recess, me and my friend were trying to hit the Sabrina. He spent all of recess, the two of them, trying to imitate that shot and calling it the Sabrina. And he's like, it was really hard because obviously that's a really hard shot. But like by the end of recess, my friend got it once. So they're not trying to be Michael Jordan. They're not trying to be LeBron. That the fact that they spent an afternoon trying to be Sabrina Ionescu is, I don't know. It's just, I
I'm
don't
going to
even know what
start
to say
crying.
about it.
I'm
Right?
literally going to start crying. That's
So
all we've ever
yeah.
wanted.
I couldn't, and that's not something I forced on him. Believe me,
Yeah.
I wasn't like
Yeah.
we will like women's sports in this house, but the fact that he went to recess and did that, and then we went to game 5, me and him, just
So
the two of us.
let's
Yeah,
get into that. Things
go
to
ahead.
be thankful for, Liberty. Tell
Is that
me
not?
what it was like on
Go.
game 5.
I cannot. So I went to which game? What was the last home? Now it's like all such a blur of joy. But I went to whatever the last home game was before game 5. I went to by myself. I was like, I had no one to go with. And I was like, you know what? I have a lot of work to do. Let me just leave it alone. And then I'll just find out later how it went. And as I got closer and closer to game time, I was like, what am I doing? They play a 10-minute Uber ride from my apartment. I was like, I'm just going to sit here while this plays out and not see how it plays out. I was like, I can't. So last minute, I bought a scalp ticket for myself and just went by myself and watched this game. And when I tell you, if you had told me 5 years ago, you're going to go to a sporting event, number one, at all, two, by yourself, and three, pay an insane amount to a scalper, that was not me 5 years ago. But I went by myself and I was so excited that while I was sitting there waiting for the game to start, I went on StubHub and I bought a ticket for game 5, knowing that they refund you if there's no game 5. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy 2 tickets for game 5. Let's just see what happens. And then I remember I was watching the game at home with my son, the game 4, and they lost and we were crushed. And then I turned to him because I had forgotten and I go, buddy, you're not going to believe this. We have plans for Sunday night. So I took my son. He goes, what? And I was like, your mom might have impulse buy a few days ago and I might have bought game 5 tickets. So it was so anyway, it's a long lead up. But so I went to game 5 with my son who's 10, and I just can't even tell you what a cool experience it was. The vibe in there, I think, number one, like obviously any like game 5 of a series is going to be amped up, but there's something about like Brooklyn folks have adopted this team and love this team so much. And I think when I first started going to WNBA games, I expected there to be women. I expected there to be queer women. I expected there to be people there with like, groups of young girls, like a Girl Scout troop there on a field trip so they can learn about achievement. What I did not expect is all these men, like men wearing jerseys that I know because I went to the gift shop, cost a lot of money with
Yeah.
women's names on the back. You've got men there, dads and sons. You've got like, I just can't like, seemingly, what do I know from the surface, but seemingly straight men walking around in everyone loves women's sports shirts. The vibe was, Erin, and then you've got like seemingly straight, again, I don't want to guess on anybody's life, but seemingly straight people wearing queer women's jerseys and like yelling in support of them, yelling, pass it to JJ, pass it to JJ. Like, I can't, just the absolute, I don't even know what to say about it. Like, and I realize I should be talking about the sports aspect, but just the emotional aspect
No,
of walking around and seeing all this. And then in the middle of it,
absolutely.
this is my son's team. He doesn't know anything about the Brooklyn Nets. He does. In fact, at one point I said something about the Nets and he said, who are the Nets? And I said, oh, they're the
I want to
men's
hang out
basketball.
with him.
He's pretty rad. And he said, who are the Nets? And I said, oh, that's the men's basketball team that plays where the Liberty plays. And he goes, there's a men's team that plays at the Liberty Stadium? In his mind, that's the Liberty Stadium. And some random men are guests there occasionally.
This is so great.
So, and then halfway through the game, he looks up at the Jumbotron. And he goes, oh my God, there's so-and-so from my class. on the Jumbotron. Here's a 10-year-old boy seeing another 10-year-old boy on the Jumbotron that he knows. And he's like, I can't wait to tell him tomorrow. And I was like, what is this fantasy world? So I don't know. Yeah. And I guess, and then in between all that, some basketball happened. But while I'm having this like emotionally healing experience on 27 different levels of people accepting women, cheering for women, boys having women as heroes, straight people cheering for queer people, I was like, I don't know, man. This is
This
something.
is, I mean, this is what we've wanted and hoped for, well, my entire life. Like
Mhm.
I think just the conversation, just people having conversations about it is so huge. I mean, I've been trying to convince people to watch and talk to me about women's sports since I was a child. But I don't, a lot of time, you get some hardcore lesbians that are like, why are men coaching and why are blah, blah. I want all the men to be involved. I want them to be at the game. I want them, of course, I want more female coaches, but like I don't want to alienate. Like this to me, little boys, like your son going, even the recess story with another boy shooting the Sabrina, that's what we want, like
Yeah.
that's parity, that's
Yeah.
equality, that's
Right.
enthusiasm, that's like women, I think innately will hopefully support other women and be our biggest fan groups and LGBTQ. But if we get like straight guys and straight boys
That's
jumping
the thing is that,
in,
yeah.
that's huge. That's huge.
Well, I feel like the first step is people being like, oh my God, I'm really into women's basketball. And then the next step after that is people just calling it basketball. And
Yeah.
that's where my son's at is like, I'm into women's sports. My son just thinks of them as sports. And him and his friends are just like, yeah, I'm going to go see some basketball. They're not like, I'm going to see women's like they're just, I don't mean to be like, we're in a post racial world, but it's just like,
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? You just want it to be like part of the basketball conversation. And it's, or
Yeah.
yeah, man,
And
it
they will,
was,
especially with like a Jonquel Jones too. Like for me, there's been this whole like, well, since it's come such a long way. Like the initial advertising for the WNBA, well, it actually probably started in '96 around the Olympics, our first Olympic basketball team. They were all like, there's a great documentary on Amazon about it. Like they had really like masculine presenting women in makeup and heels, and it was so cringy. Like I can't even tell you how
mhm.
cringy it is. Now you get like, let's just say like straight boys like looking at a Jonquel Jones, like a mask presenting woman, um with not no judgment, just like this is a basketball player. Like and so it'll change their perception of gender, of how women can be
Yes,
anything.
yes.
They can look like anything, they can be anything. And that, they don't realize it now, but that is absolutely, it's huge.
It's very different from how the WNBA started. And I also, it's so cool to me that you were a fan from the start. I feel embarrassed that I am arriving so late. It's one of those things where I'm like, we should have all been here.
Don't be
But right,
embarrassed. I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't
no.
want to cut you off, but I mean, this is one of the greatest joys for me is the new fandom. It's awesome. Whether it's 2 years, whether it's 1 year or whatever, just jumping in. There's no bandwagon. It's just you're discovering this in real time, and that's awesome.
But I'm interested to hear you say that because I have wondered. Like, there have been a couple times where I've been at games and I'll see somebody, or I even like talk. There was one time where the game that I went to by myself, I ended up talking to the family next to me, and it was like um, a lesbian who I'd say maybe in her 60s, and her wife, and then her two adult kids, and they were all there. And she's like, "Yeah, I have season tickets." And I just thought, like, I wonder if this makes people mad who have been fans from day one. I thought, I wonder if they are looking around the stadium of 18,000 people, being like, "Where y'all been? Now you're here." Like I wondered if there was like some of that sentiment. And I know you can't speak for everybody, but I feel like I that's good to hear that it doesn't bother you. Because I was like, man, I don't know. Part of me would be pissed if I was one of these people. I'd be like, all right, you guys.
No, that doesn't bother me at all. The only thing, what bothers me is when people now talk out of turn about it,
Mm,
specifically male broadcasters. Like they've been there the whole time and they know what they're talking about. And that makes me volatile. It's like when people just start watching, but they have all these opinions, that's when I go, okay, just calm down. But just people
Yeah.
discovering it and getting a ticket and supporting. I mean, listen, the Sparks, I'm out here, Liberty, I'm always obviously ride or die because I'm a New Yorker, but Sparks are my number two. So I go see a ton of Sparks games for a very long time now. And, when Indiana played LA this season, I had to get like a cheap seat because they were so and I was like, oh God, that made me. But again, now we're introducing all these new people. Like at the beginning of the season was like, okay, go for Clark, but stay for your team and come back for your team, which I think will, happen because if you look at the numbers and the attendance when people are like, oh, it's only Clark, that's then when I get volatile about that. But when she, and believe me, I love her. But when Indiana drops off, the playoffs, the attendance and the TV ratings are through the roof. So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful for all of this.
Yeah, me too. My dad is from Indiana, and nobody loves basketball more than those folks. And one thing that's cool is because he's really involved with my son and blah blah blah. He wants to be a good grandfather. So at one point, I texted him because we were about to sit down. I was like, "You watching this game?" Because we were about to watch one of the WNBA finals games, and he was like, "Oh, well, no, because there's a baseball game on I was going to watch." And I was like, "All right." And then I could tell that he switched over because he wanted to be able to talk to my son about it later. But then my dad ended up watching the rest of the series, and it's just cool to have people like. At that point, Indiana wasn't even in it, but it's like I think you're right that once people see it, my dad was like, "God, this is some good basketball," and then he like wanted to
Yeah.
talk technical stuff with my son. It was just cool to have like once people. I think you're right. Once people get one taste, they're like, "Oh, this is severely fun."
Yeah, yeah. And then the team starts winning, and that's another phase. You know what I mean? So, like, for me, as long as people aren't talking out of turn, and I mean like dumb opinions from like brand new fans, that's the only point where I go, okay, shut the fuck up. But new fans coming in and discovering, oh, I absolutely love it. Love it. Very thankful
Here's
for all
my
of that.
here's my yeah, here's my hot take that I've only developed 30 seconds ago, so I have not thought it through. But I feel like I'm with you on like, sure, let's have male coaches, let's have female coaches. I will say I could go my whole life and never have a male sports commenter comment on women's sports. That I feel like that would feel fine to me for that exact reason that you're saying. I'm like, I want to hear women who know the game, women who've played the game. I want to hear them talk about the game. I want to learn it from them. That's my little hot take.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we're slowly getting there. But like even I went off on like this is probably already on the podcast a couple weeks ago, but I just went off and I'll make it real short. But there's this, soccer player, DeMarcus Beasley. No offense to him. I'm sure, I love watching him play, but they put him in three other women talking about soccer and WSL. And he has like nothing to bring. He's just like he's a great soccer player. He's just not a good announcer. But they feel like they have to have a man in there. So God forbid they have three or four women, intelligent women that played the game talking about the game. And so I
Right.
I feel like hopefully that will start to change
Yeah.
because it's infuriating. It really is infuriating.
Well, there's an assumed level of expertise when you have a man talking about
Yeah,
sports, and I don't care for that. I don't care for the fact that it's like, well, you're a guy, so you must know about this sports thing. I don't
yeah,
care for that, and I also look. I'm not an athlete, but yet, but I feel
yet,
like, but I feel like I know enough to know that like women's sports often there's like a different approach, a different style, a different strategy, different philosophy than the men's version of a sport. And I want to hear somebody who, again, I want to hear a female athlete who played the game, who coached the game, who knows the game, talk about it. I don't want to hear somebody from the outside, from the other branch of the sport, try to get in and comment. I just don't
yeah,
need it. The same way I don't, anytime there's an article about women's reproductive issues in the New York Times, the first thing I do is look at the byline. And if it was written by a man, then I skip it because I'm not interested. I do not need that point of view. It is boring to me.
yeah. I'm like, you know, Bob, you know what's going on?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
absolutely
tell me,
stop.
please tell me about IVF, Kevin.
Tell me about your experience, Kevin, with IVF and just your periods. And then, when it's over and you think you're going to get a break and then menopause comes jackhammering and
Yeah.
Kevin, sit me down and talk to me about hormone replacement therapy.
I
I want to
genuinely,
know. I want to know,
I,
Kevin.
yeah, I started doing that. I really genuinely did that during the Me Too movement. I would only read articles during the Me Too movement that were written by, I mean, look, I'm making a lot of assumptions based on names. There's unisex names. I should be clear about that. But I really was. I was like, I don't need to hear from a guy who is just discovering that sexual harassment exists, I don't need the analysis. I really don't. Like, I don't know, man.
Turns out there's a lot going on out there, ladies.
Do
Shut
you
the
know that
fuck up.
sometimes they put their hands on women's knees at work? Kevin, you are
Oh,
12
Kevin.
steps behind. Can't. But okay, but Erin, I feel bad. So this is your podcast. I feel like I came here hot and heavy and started talking. What you wanted to do a list, you wanted to do things you're thankful for. Don't let me fuck up your flow.
Oh no, we're first of all this insight on game 5 and your son is I'm so thankful for that. So we're already knee deep in the thankfulness. No,
Okay.
it's it's Thanksgiving, so just wanted to, do some large bullet points of what I'm thankful for, what we're thankful for. And we've already came across about 5 different subjects, not even planned that we're thankful for. So we're right in the middle. We're in the belly of the beast. Liberty.
What is your number? Go ahead. What is your number one
Well, I
thing that
was
you're
just going to
thankful
say
for?
Liberty was on the list. So there we go. We've and I did I'm looking to my right, by the way, because I have so many whiteboards because I'm such an absolute nerd. So I'm looking
Love
at
it.
my whiteboard. All right, we'll throw some other stuff out. While we're in the basketball, this is my last basketball one. Well, I had 2 of them, but Courtney Williams. I had this. There's so many reasons why I'm thankful for Courtney Williams. I think she's got like the most beautiful jump shot, one of the most beautiful jump shots I've ever seen in my life. That the fact that she can go, she's so fast, and then she just pops up like a gopher. I don't know if that's something, and then just nails it every single time. The relationship she had with her dad, like my dad, my whole relationship with my dad was sports. R.I.P. Dick Foley. So anytime I see like a dad in the stands, I just start crying. He's her biggest president of her fan club. So that relationship is amazing. And then the ultimate kicker, I know this is random, but I couldn't love her more. And then a couple, days, weeks after her season is wrapped, and I loved the Lynx. I love the Lynx. Obviously so happy for the Liberty, but the Lynx were so fun to watch. Um, she gets engaged to her girlfriend, and then on Instagram, the song Let's Get Married by Jagged Edge plays. Now, I'm not saying stop the podcast and listen to this. I will put the video in the show notes, but it has been one of my favorite. I just love that song so much because it is such a distinct memory for me of living on 21st Street in Manhattan between 8th and 9th. It was my friend's apartment that I subletted. So every gay pride, I would throw these like epic brunches and everyone would come in and drink and dance. And then we'd go to the parade. And I would play that song like constantly because it's one of the greatest lyrics. Meet me at the altar in your white dress. We ain't getting any younger. We might as well do this. I
It's
mean,
great. It's
it's
great.
just a mic drop. It's a mic
Yeah,
drop song.
I've been worn down by time.
Yeah. Just I always thought like if I ever get married, probably that ship has sailed. My partner has absolutely no interest. I would want to come down the aisle, not at a church. Religion is very triggering. But somewhere, a fun space, and I would want to dance down the aisle to that song, lip syncing. That's my version of
That's
getting married.
that's a flawless plan. I'm sorry. That's
Yeah.
excellent. You should do that just for the vibes and the party. You don't have to legally get married on paper. You could just have a wedding.
Yeah.
You could just have
Again,
have a party where you get to go down that aisle and then people give you KitchenAid mixers.
I'll take a mixer. You don't know my partner, Sarah, but this is her definition of her worst nightmare. Like a
Just like to have
party,
oh, got it.
dancing, the attention on herself. It's like she just like literally cannot handle it. So for me, it's just going to be like that song in my apartment and I'll just dance around to it. But I was like, if I couldn't love Courtney Williams anymore, she puts
Yeah.
that on the backdrop of her like photos with her wife. And I'm like, oh God, I love her. Very thankful for Courtney
Yeah.
Williams.
Also, not to like make all this about like, healing sad shit, but like to watch a dad cheer like that for his queer daughter, like that's a very, very fucking big deal. And I think people, it's so recent I mean, for many people, that's their present is having a hard time being queer and having a hard time with their family. And it's
Yeah.
very, very recent in the rearview mirror that was everybody's experience. And so to watch a dad just be so proud of his daughter, to jump up and like, and to applaud her, and to be like you said, president of her fan club, like that's amazing to watch. Like that models that behavior for other straight parents. that models that baseline of like what how you should expect to be treated for queer folks, like for young queer folks. I just yeah, when you said
So
you were like,
great.
yeah, it's hard not to get choked up when you see her dad with his custom shit that he made himself, like with her number on his hat. Like you know they didn't sell that at the gift shop in Minnesota. He had that shit made. I love that man.
Yeah, I love him. I just that's like one of I've been following her for so long and he's been there the whole time. Like, you
Yeah.
know, listeners, if you're like, yeah, new to the WNBA, Courtney Williams' dad. I mean, I was watching her gazillion years ago play for Connecticut and he was in the front row just losing his mind. So this is not like a, oh, my dad shows up at the finals. He is there
Mm-hmm.
consistently throughout her whole career. And yeah, that's super feel good. Uh Another thing I'm thankful for is Sabalenka. We'll do tennis, a little bit of tennis. This woman has been one of my favorites for a very long time. She had a lot of sort of mental lapses. Her whole thing is like physically she's had all the tools her entire life to start winning like a lot of championships in a row. And she worked on this mental piece, which I think is so incredibly hard, especially in tennis. It is, to me, it's like a mental gymnastics. She's so hot. She's so good looking. It's insane. She's got multiple tiger tattoos on her, and I'm a sucker for a tattoo. She wins the Aussie Open, wins the US Open, and I'm just thankful that she has put all of it together because I've been wanting this like consistency at the top of the women's game, and I think we totally have it now with the Coco Gauff, with the Sabalenka, with Swiatek, just to name a few, and yeah, I'm really thankful for Sabalenka. I love her.
It's great. I have nothing to add to that. I don't really follow tennis, so I'm very sorry. I think it's probably partly because I played tennis in high school and I lettered. And so I just feel like once you've seen the top, Erin, it's hard to like watch other people who are struggling to get on your level. So I won exactly one match. I don't know why they gave me that letter. They should not have. I lost every other match. But like I said, Erin, once you've
But
been to the top of the mountain,
yeah,
it's just hard.
it's
It's hard to watch
hard
other
to
people who are.
watch.
It's hard to watch people like Coco Gauff and Sabalenka, and it's hard to watch other people who are at the bottom trying to like climb up to you.
It must just feel like, oh God, like what a waste. You know what I mean? Like maybe they should
Mm.
try another sport, or
I mean,
just
God bless.
cheer, just be cheer. Or like that's the whole thing, and then we'll move on. But like when I was growing up, that's all we had. I didn't play tennis. I had
Hmm.
like I tried to play tennis. I was absolutely terrible at tennis. We played a lot of family badminton, which was super fun. But I became an obsessed tennis fan because that was the only women I could see. And they were
No,
just
yeah,
like, I geek out about tennis and have no relationship to tennis whatsoever.
no, it makes sense. It's like you want to see. I jokingly sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, you're a big basketball fan, right?" And I'll jokingly say, "I'm a fan of watching women excel." And it's true. It's like
Yeah.
you show me
Yeah.
a woman who's kicking ass, and I have it on my TV, I will watch it. Um, but yeah, the only reason I ended up even playing tennis, my best friend was captain of the tennis team, and I ran into her one day in the hallway in high school, and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to the first tennis meeting. Do you want to be on the team?" And I was like, "I can't. I don't know how to play tennis." She goes, "We lose every match. Who cares? Just come." And I was like, all right. So I used to always just do whatever the school play was. And I was like, it was my senior year. And I was like, on a lark, I was like, what if I didn't do the next play and I just did tennis, became a person who did tennis, like I'm basically cosplaying. And so I joined the team because it was so bad they just let anybody on. And like I said, my best friend was like, I'll just tell the coach you're on the team. So I went. It's like me going to like Dick's Sporting Goods trying to like find a tennis outfit. I was like, what are tennis skirts? What are I didn't know. It was like it
This is
was
amazing.
it was so stupid. It was like somebody had been like, "You're a Jedi now," and I had to like go pick out a lightsaber. Like I knew exactly that much. And so then, like I said, like I won one match against the only school that was worse than us. But there were no stands or anything. But my parents came and watched one practice just because they couldn't believe. They probably low key thought I was like lying and going to do drugs every day when I said practice was because they were like, "Sorry, you're doing what?" And I was like, "I'm on the tennis team." So they literally, I'll never forget. There were no other parents there because there was no place to sit. It was just my mom and my dad in their coats just watching because they were like, we can't compute this. So that was my one foray into tennis. But yeah, so I love the analysis. If I wanted to get into tennis, who should I start watching? How should I do it?
Well, it's, you have to kind of plan ahead because unfortunately, like, you've got the four big grand slams, right? So January, mid-January starts Australian Open, and then the spring is the French, summer, July is Wimbledon, and then late August around Labor Day is US Open. So the US Open is the easiest one to watch because you're on East Coast time. And obviously it's in New York. So I would say if you plan to do one thing for tennis next year, you live in New York, go get a ticket to the US Open and watch a match. Now you can watch them all on TV,
All
which
right.
is awesome. But in Brooklyn, that'll be easy to get there. So
All
that's
right.
my
I'm going to do
tennis
it.
goal for you.
Great. I'll do it, and then I'm going to report back to you the results,
Yeah.
like
Just be
the emotional results,
yeah.
not the score.
Yeah. I'm all into emotional results. I would say if you the Australian Open, probably semis and finals, they usually play, like, you can usually play or watch at like East Coast time. You might be able to catch that live at like 8 or 9 a.m. You have to kind of go out of your way. French is almost impossible, especially like on the West Coast, because the finals are at like 4 a.m. I do a lot of taping and I don't look at my phone, but I'll keep you updated on that. But I just think if you have a simple goal of even starting halfway through next year, Wimbledon, you'll be able to see a whole bunch of events because it's East Coast time, and then taking yourself to a U.S. Open match. That's my tennis
All
goal
right.
for you next year.
Okay. That's my New Year's resolution.
Let's talk Olympics. Now, in my Jenny, a deep dive, did you attend the 2020 Olympics?
I did
I think
attend the 2020 Olympics.
I discovered that. That's amazing.
I It was insane. So I got to go because Amber Ruffin at the time was hosting the Amber Ruffin Show. I was lucky enough to get to be head writer and showrunner of that show. And Peacock, because obviously then like NBC has the contract for the Olympics, Peacock sent her over to make a bunch of like a series of funny little videos about the Olympics at the Olympics. And so we wrote and produced those videos together. And it was a wild thing because it was still deep COVID.
Yeah.
The vaccine had come out. A lot of Americans had been vaccinated, but only like 20% of Japan had been vaccinated at the time. So they were not letting any tourists into Japan. Like you couldn't just be like, I'm going to go see Kyoto and buy a ticket. You could not do that. You could only, because only, yeah, like I said, like they had a slow rollout for the vaccine. And so you could only go to Japan if you had a work reason to be there. So we got to go. I cannot express the amount of paperwork it took for us to go. This was the Olympics where athletes' families didn't get to go, and even
Yeah.
like entire like coaching teams. Like there would be like an athlete there, and they would have like one of their coaches. Um, when we went, you had to do a 14-day quarantine, and then you were allowed to be out of your hotel. But Amber and I only went for 10 days, so you were allowed to leave your hotel if you were going to a work site, like if we were going someplace to film a thing, and then you had to come right back, and you got 15 minutes a day to go to a bodega if you needed to pick anything up, and that was it.
Wow.
You downloaded a tracking app. You had downloaded two apps from the Japanese government. One was a temperature tracking app. So you woke up every morning, took your temperature, and recorded what your temperature was on this app. And the other app was a location tracking. So you can't just go run around Japan because they know. I mean, unless you want to be shady and leave your phone at home and blah blah in the hotel. But I don't know. I just felt so lucky to go, and I felt lucky that Japan was willing to host what could have been
Yeah.
a super spreader event that wiped out humanity. So I felt like I would love to play by the rules because I'm thrilled that they're willing to host us and let us be there. So that's what we did. So I went. I technically have been to Japan, but really I've been to like a Marriott,
Five
and it was
bodegas in Kyoto.
yeah. And so we were in Tokyo. Also, what's so crazy is it's the 2020 Olympics, but it took place in 2021. The reason, but all the signage and everything still said 2020 because it would have cost millions of dollars to reprint everything. And I
Oh my
do
God, that's
love. I feel like
wild.
isn't that so funny? So we were fully in July 2021, and the whole city is just decked out in signs that say 2020 Olympics. And I do love that as a society, they were like, let's just go with this. Because I feel like the Olympics isn't exactly it's not exactly a money saving venture, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
countries have whole stadiums in decay that they
Yeah.
just built. Like there's every country that's hosted the Olympics has some building that looks like the Coliseum, but it
Yeah.
looks like it because they're like, well, in 1972 we built this thing and now we know what to do with it. So I do love that for once in the history of the Olympics, they were like, let's save a little bit of money and not waste this stuff. So it was 2021. We're walking around, every sign says Tokyo 2020. But it was so cool. I felt so lucky. Number one, I just am a huge fan of the Olympics. I watch so much of it every time it's on. And so then to get to see the Olympic apparatus up close, to see everything that goes into creating the Olympics, and then to get to have gone to the one Olympics that like nobody got to go to. So one time our hotel was across the street from the women's beach volleyball venue. I say that
Hello.
right.
Hello.
I said women's. I'm sure men also played there, but who cares? So I know. Oh, Erin, wake up! Erin, wake up! so, I at one point, Amber and I had just a space in between work duties, and I was like, I just checked the schedule. There is a women's beach volleyball match happening across the street. What if we went and showed our badges, and maybe they let us in, and maybe they don't?
With
And
your
Amber's
ankle
like, I'm in,
bracelets.
and we went, and because it was like technically, it was like a work site, it was part of the
Yeah.
Olympics. So we went and we watched a couple matches back to back. Erin, it was wild. It looked like the opening credits of Ted Lasso, where there's just empty seats. Like, I'm telling you, it was a full stadium and it was empty. The only people there were the athletes who were on the court, and then they each had like one or two coaches on the sidelines. That is it. And so then Amber and I were just sitting in this empty stadium. This match, it's like we were like emperors of Rome. It was like entertain us. Just the two of us were having a private Olympics.
Wow. That's incredible.
It was wild.
Make
It was one
your
of the most
shorts shorter.
bring
I
me the
am the
ladies in the
queen.
bikinis. Bring me the bikinis. So,
Any
but yeah,
highlights
but sorry.
from this past summer Olympics?
For me, the highlight was the women's basketball finals. I couldn't, where they won by 1 point. That was the most insane thing I've ever seen. I can't even. My son and I were in a wedding that day. Like, I was like the best person, and he was an usher. And when I tell you, it was a photo finish for us to get to that wedding on time, because we woke up in the morning and we turned on that game. And then we're like screaming at my laptop, and I keep looking at my watch being like, okay, how quickly can we put suits on before we get like, and we just, that game was unbelievable. I was so close. And I have to say, I like another country giving America a run for its money. It's not fun to be like a country who comes into any sport and steamrolls every year and dominates with no competition. I loved seeing America have to sweat and work for something in one of the sports that we dominate. What did you think? What was your highlight?
Um, well, that was crazy because I had, you know, basketball's my favorite. Of course, I'm like, obviously Team USA. But during that game, and I love Gabby Williams. There's so many players on that French team that gave up their WNBA season to come together as a team and play for France, which I thought was such a compelling story. So halfway through the game, I was like, it's not the worst thing if we lose, like, what would it be like for France to win in France and have all these players that gave up so much? So at one point I was like, I think I'm rooting for France. And then as soon as I said that, I'm like, oh God, no. But then, so it was just like this emotional swing but then I thought, God, the pressure USA is under because Cheryl Reeve, you've got Tarazi's last go around. Like, you don't want to be the team that loses. But at the same point, I thought the French team was so compelling. But to lose that way on a Gabby Williams, she makes the shot, but the toe is under the line. I mean, it was also, yeah, I'm just such a Gabby Williams fan. But so I'm glad we won, but I was emotionally prepared to lose and be okay with it. But then the other thing is like that gets me is like that was the last event. And the men had just won and they were all there. And if we had lost, I just always think about it as like female empowerment. Like I would have been like, oh God, it would have really bothered me. So at the end of the day, I am super glad we won.
Yeah, but the
um,
most exciting possible way to have won.
the most exciting possible way. And like just hats off to France. Like they had to be so proud of themselves. That was awesome. I think a real highlight for me, I'll just do quick bullet points. Ledecky and her rivalry with Titmus in the pool. Obviously, I always say like 15,000 meters. I think it's 1,500 meters. Ledecky, 17 body lanes. Like that's just got to be demoralizing for the other people just looking at her feet as they pass her. Just her utter dominance. I went in the 100-meter dash living and dying for Sha'Carri Richardson, who I absolutely love, but came out living and dying for Julian Alfred, who got the first gold medal for St. Lucia. her like little I do this like a little island country. She gets off the plane and people were losing their minds. And I just thought like that's like the epitome of the Olympics when you go in and you're like, obviously Team USA, but all these other international stories come out that are so feel good. So if we had to lose, and I say we, because I run 3 times a year, then I was happy that it was Julian Alfred. I guess
I think you're right, though.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think one of the most exciting things about the Olympics is always these stories of like somebody who won the only medal for their country. They went
Yeah.
home. They were
Oh,
given a mansion and a parade. Like
yeah.
those stories are so. I will say, I said before, I don't follow tennis. The one tennis game that I have watched, holding my breath. Do you know who Monica Puig is?
How does that name sound so familiar? But wait, talk me
Because
through who she is.
she won the only gold medal for Puerto Rico ever. So I'm Puerto Rican.
Okay. Okay.
And I was home visiting my parents at one point, and we're just talking about the Olympics in general. My dad goes, there's like a Puerto Rican tennis player who's doing pretty well. And I was like, oh no, tell me about it, blah, blah, blah. And so I don't even know what she was ranked, a millionth. And so I Google and I was like, wait a second, she's in the gold medal match and it's on right now. So my parents are like, okay, 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 okay. So we stop what we're doing and we turn on the TV and she starts doing really well. And she's playing, who is she playing? And this is where you can tell I'm not a sports person. I
Wait,
think she was playing
this year?
no,
Not this past year,
this is
a
a
while
few,
ago. Okay.
no, but don't worry. If Puerto Ricans win something, we'll hold on to that shit forever. Like it's just happened today. And she starts doing well. She starts doing better. And then it starts to become clear that she has a shot at winning. She is not ranked. She's playing, I think, the second seeded player from like, I don't know, Germany, Austria, a German speaking country. I now this story is full of erroneous facts, but she ends up, and then as she's building momentum, the crowd starts chanting "Si se puede," and the next thing I know, I'm like texting relatives, being like, "Are you watching this?" They're like, "Yes, I'm watching this." Like I don't even have to say, "Are you watching the Olympic tennis match?" I didn't. I just started texting relatives saying, "Are you watching this?" They were like, "Yes, I am." And everybody, and she ends up winning, and it's the only gold medal Puerto Rico's ever won
It's amazing.
at that point. And then flags come down, and then you've got the announcer, and he's like, the announcer starts saying things about Puerto Rico, and maybe he said the name of whatever song they played, but all of it is being mispronounced, and it's because this announcer did not wake up that morning thinking he was going to say any of those things out loud. This man was not prepped to pronounce these things. That's how much of a dark horse the whole thing it was. So that is the one tennis match
Oh,
I
I
have
love
really
it.
watched and been invested in and would rewatch on a moment's notice. If I was home on a Friday night, someone's like, "You want to rewatch that tennis match from like 2000?" I'd be like, "Yes."
But I mean, that's what it is. You fall in love with these players from all
Right.
around the world. And then, of course, I have a joke about this in my act. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not that type of, but
Mhm.
I'm just, it's the concept of like, you're rooting for one person from the US, and then they tell you the most horrific story from their competitor. And you're like, of course, how am I not going to root for this person? But yeah, two
Yeah.
two
Sorry.
other quick ones. U.S.
Yeah.
women's
Please,
national
please.
team winning gold. Emma Hayes. She coached maybe I don't know 5 games, and we win the gold medal after our epic collapse in 2023. I thought that was just a big bowl of joy. I love that. I love that we played Brazil because that was super feel good because at least she got the silver medal. And the last one, the highlight for me was the Biles Andrade Childs podium in US gymnastics, or just in the finals of the floor. Biles took silver, Andrade took gold, Childs takes bronze. I know that's the whole that story went south, but just on that podium, the first black podium in gymnastics for the first time. I thought that I mean I and they were like doing the bowing to Andrade, who her story is epic, literally persevering from the slums of Brazil. I mean, the whole thing was amazing. But that to me was an iconic moment that I'm super thankful for. It was amazing. It really was
Yeah.
amazing.
Like you said, anytime you get to see people break into a space that they are not represented in, also too, like that is exciting to me. Where you're like, great,
Yeah.
this, like we're still talking about representation, like great, other people, other young girls of color will see this and think, huh, maybe I've been flipping around in the backyard. Maybe I want to get involved in gymnastics. And I think that is, or maybe they're like, let me go backyard and see if I can flip. I think I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
really, you can tell my deep professional technical understanding of gymnastics. I'm like, flipping around? Is that what
Oh,
it
it's
is?
always flipping around. It's flipping around and jumping. That was the only like gym block of gym that I failed. So I had to do like extra work on like going up the rope because I couldn't get my size 11 feet on the balance beam. Don't want to brag. Okay, just two more. You had mentioned PWHL.
Hell
Are you into
yes.
it? Super thankful that this league exists.
Oh my God. So I was like I was in my Subaru listening to NPR, two facts that are real. And they started doing this report on the PWHL. And I was like, what the fuck? What are they talking about? There's a professional women's hockey league. And this was in, I want to say January of this year. And so I get home. As soon as I get home, I Google it. And it turns out the season has just started. There are six teams. One of them is quote unquote New York. They're playing half their games in Connecticut and half their games on Long Island. And I was like, I have to go. I have to see this. I love watching live hockey. My passion for hockey comes from the Nintendo NES ice hockey game where you get to choose skinny guy, medium guy, and big guy. Um, and where two of the teams were USSR and Czechoslovakia. But
Oh wow.
yeah, love play. Yeah, I really love. I went to a lot of Capitals games as a kid. I grew up in the DC area. So I was like, I'm sorry, there's a women's professional ice hockey league. I have to see this. So I found like the one other friend who was willing to do this with me and drove to Long Island, which is like, it took me like an hour and a half to get to this game. It was so fun. The vibe was so great. It was so cool to watch a women's professional ice hockey game. I loved it. And I'm so excited to try to go see more this coming season.
It'll be easier because they're going to play in Jersey. So
That's right.
hopefully I'm assuming you got to assume Jersey's with Jersey Transit's easier than Long Island. I mean, Long Island is just a beast to get to, especially since we're from Brooklyn. But yeah, that the hockey league, there have been so many iterations of women's professional hockey leagues for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And then Billie Jean King and Mark Walter, who owns the Dodgers, came together and they're like, we're just going to do this league. Little bit of controversy because they kind of dismantled the old league pretty quickly. People lost contracts. It wasn't the greatest. However, it was, you got to make changes. And they are off and running. I mean, and also listeners and Jenny, you can watch every game now on YouTube. The
What?
entire season next year is all on YouTube. So they're making it so much more accessible. Also, another thing is they are going on 6, 7 game tour of other cities. I think there's like one in North Carolina, Seattle. Anyway, so they're taking it on the road. There are two other places, I think Edmonton, Vancouver, and Canada. But yeah, every game you can watch on YouTube. So pick a team. I don't even have a team. I'm in LA, but I mean, I'll
You
pick New
got to pick the
York.
Sirens. You got to pick the
I
Sirens.
know I got a real soft spot for the Minnesota Frost. I'm not going to lie.
Why is that? Tell me why.
Well, when New York, was eliminated, I went all in with Minnesota, and I know a lot of they had a whole bunch of players that I used to see on the Olympics on the national team, and then I kind of became obsessed with both goalkeepers, Nicole Hensley, Maddie Rooney. I just had Nicole Hensley on my live podcast that I did in Minneapolis, so I have like a real soft spot for the Frost.
That's fair. All right, that's
But
fair. That's fair.
but New York, obviously, I've got it. I mean, I'm a New Yorker. So yeah. All right. One more. I don't want to hog all your time.
Please, this is so fun. I'll talk about this all day.
Okay, I'll just do one. I'll do one honorable mention, and then we'll end with one. The Oklahoma softball senior class. I'm thankful for them, but I'm very much thankful that they've all graduated because I don't cheer for the Oklahoma softball, and they won 4 titles in a row. I mean, if they were men, they would be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and the story would be like, "This is one of the greatest teams of all time." Boone, Hanson, May, Jennings, Coleman, Brito, freshman through senior year, they won 4 national championships in a row. Now, I'm glad they did. Congratulations. I have admitted that they are an epic team that will go down in history, but I'm very thankful that they've graduated and I don't have to see them win again. I'm very excited to watch them play in the pro leagues, but not all on the same team, winning and crushing my UCLA team pretty much every year. So I am thankful for that. All right, and we'll end with this. A league of their own, women's baseball in 2026. I just saw that headline and immediately started crying.
This is my favorite of all of the things on your list. I am so excited. Baseball is my favorite sport to watch, which I know is controversial because 80% of the time nothing's happening and people don't enjoy watching, other people don't enjoy watching baseball. I love watching baseball. I love it. And I especially love to watch it live. There is nothing like sitting with a beer and some peanuts
Yes.
and watching baseball. I'm so excited for there to be women's league. And then the thing that I'm the most excited about is one of the articles I read about it. One of the co-founders was talking about how they want to build a league that allows for all kinds of players, including players who are parents. And I think that this is a thing that we don't talk about enough in America because we love to talk about, like, oh, why aren't there more women in science? Why aren't there more women in comedy? Why aren't there more women in this and that? And so much of that is because we create workspaces with only men in mind. And women traditionally, for better or for worse, have all kinds of outside of work responsibilities, whether that's childcare, whether that's taking care of older parents, whether that's they're the person in a partnership expected to wait for the cable guy while the husband goes to work. Women, men are expected to only focus on work. Women are expected to handle, if they
All of it.
work and all of their life stuff. And so for someone to say from the get-go before the league starts, we want to make sure that people who are mothers are about or parents are able to play, like, that is incredible to not to know that then you will get the best talent. It's like Allison Felix opening up that kind of conversation in track and field,
Yeah.
right? And being like, hey man, if we don't have childcare at the Olympics, then some of the best runners will not be able to come here. That's one of the biggest challenges to women who are parents being at the Olympics. Who's watching my kid while I go to the Olympics? So I feel like the fact that Allison Felix started that conversation in track and that this league is already thinking about that before it starts, that made me so excited. I've worked at a million shows. At every comedy show that I've been in the writers' room for, I've been the only mom because the work hours just aren't. It's
Yeah.
nobody's not anything anybody's doing intentionally, but we shape our workplaces with the idea that either you don't have kids or you have a wife at home who's taking care of all this kid related stuff. So the idea that this league wants to make sure that it's welcoming for women who have all kinds of responsibilities makes me so excited.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you said that because that is, obviously that's not something on the forefront of my mind because I'm not a mom. However, when I see all these leagues and there's so many moms now in soccer and in basketball, track, all of it, I love that. I gravitate towards that. I become a bigger fan of them because they're moms. And they're finally working it into these collective bargaining agreements in the WNBA, in the NWSL, where it is a huge, huge bargaining chip. They're like, it has to be in the contract. There has to be childcare. And there's nothing cuter than like Brianna Stewart and all of them bringing their little babies up, into the
Yes.
press conference. It's wonderful to
Yeah.
see.
But also too, like exactly like you were saying, like if the Oklahoma team were men, it would be a bigger story.
Yeah.
The number of professional women's soccer players who have popped out a baby and then been back on the field the next season. I'm sorry, but like if we're gonna say things like, so and so, he's we're excited to see him. He's back from an ACL injury. Man, if you don't say with twice the volume, this woman had a baby and is back here on the field, that's insane. That's so wild. Like what a physical accomplishment. That's wild.
It's
But yeah, it's part of women's sports. It just is. And so I think instead of pretending like it doesn't exist, let's allow for it so that you get the best players, so that the players you have can succeed. So you don't have people making these like crappy choices between their job and what they want for the rest of their whole life. Um, yeah, man, I was just really excited. Yeah, and I know it's like that's not a concern for everybody, but I feel like even if you're not a parent, you should want the best people to be doing the job. And you
oh,
can't have the best
absolutely.
like the number of times where I would come to a job and like a male coworker of mine, and again, like no shade, like they're all great guys, but like I remember one time I came in and he was like, "Oh, my son has 103-degree fever. I hope he's okay." I'm like, "Yeah, but you get to still be at work. If my son gets 103-degree fever, I'm getting a call from school and I have to go." And so like I don't, so it just is like the fact that we are going to create a space where people can succeed in this field and there's an allowance made for this other part of their life that's very real is, I don't know, I'm just very excited by that.
No, it's very exciting, and also these women now know that they're not going to be fired. They're going to be allowed the opportunity. There's going to be compensation. There's going to be insurance, all of it. So they don't even have to think about that as a barrier to entry, which is
Right.
absolutely huge. Which of course, at some point, if you want kids, these athletes they get going and they're like 4 or 5 years that they're almost at the height of their career, and those are also baby making years, and so the choices they have to make are unbelievable. So to set up these leagues for them is, and just to like not have to think about it, is absolutely huge. And the
Yeah.
baseball, what I loved about the story, obviously, it's just a league of their own, is like, it's just, it's one of these things where you grow up and that's your favorite movie as a woman, as an athlete. And I've been following women's baseball for so long, and it's like one step forward, 10 steps back. And it felt like, at least in front of the camera, there's been this huge push for women's softball, which has been fantastic, and it's been very slow. So women's baseball really wasn't on my radar because it's kind of, it's some smaller leagues here and there. But so to me now, of course, they've been working behind the scenes and working behind the scenes, but it just doesn't get as much coverage. And to see that come out and be announced, and that they're working towards 2026, and to see the response from it, so exciting, because I want women to play baseball. I want them to play softball. I want them to play literally everything and have professional leagues where they can get paid and live out their dreams, and I can cover it, because that's my dream. Jenny Hagel, everyone. Tune in to Late Night with Seth Meyers. She does like a lot of funny segments on the show. And also you can see her live at Joe's Pub on January 16th. She has her own show called Jenny Hagel Gives Advice. It's absolutely hysterical. The link to the tickets is in the show notes. Okay, people, it's time for the feel-good moment of the week, and it's Marta. I mean, come on, this was an easy one. The woman, the myth, the legend, won her first NWSL championship last weekend against the Washington Spirit, and it was so feel-good. She's been the best soccer player in the world for the last 20 years, and the first footballer of any gender to score at 5 different World Cups and 5 consecutive Olympic Games. I mean, that's mind-blowing. She's also Orlando's all-time leader in games played, goals, and assists. And finally, at the age of 38, she brings home the hardware. I mean, there is no player more deserving. What she's done to grow the game of soccer in the U.S. and globally is unmatched. And the icing on the cake was that her mother was in the stands watching her play in the U.S. for the first time. It was so feel good. I mean, I literally couldn't stop crying. And what a magical ending to the NWSL season. Congrats, Marta. We love you. And that is our show. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Super thankful for all of you, and Jenny Hagel for jumping on the show and doing this podcast with me. Definitely check out her show in NYC. Also, if you could go online wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, rate the show, give us 5 stars, review the show. It really helps us with, the algorithm and sponsorship and all of that. Definitely do that. That would be just incredibly helpful. And that's it. Fans, friends, family, have the best week of your life.